Policy Matters, a quarterly presentation from Maitri Policy Advocacy, where we discuss public policies that shape the prevention, intervention, and overall attention to domestic violence within our communities. In our fourth presentation of Policy Matters, we interview Adam Dodge, the founder of ntab.org, to talk about technology-facilitated abuse that the survivors and victims of gender-based violence are suffering. This episode was curated by Maitri Policy Advocacy Program and facilitated by our volunteer Smitha Chandrasekhar. Smitha is currently on the pre-med track, deeply invested in promoting the rights of survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault.
Young people use AI in their relationships to help them craft questions, responses, flirtations, all these different things. And so we're starting to see this sort of AI mediated relationships happen now. And in that, I think we lose a lot of authenticity, a lot of social skills, a lot of soft skills. And so how can we be thinking about that in our communities on a community level to make sure that the kids in our communities are not outsourcing their relationship and their interpersonal skills to AI to a degree that might be considered unsafe or unhealthy, and sort of help them know when and where to use AI in their relationships. So that's how we're we at NTAB are thinking about it on a community level, most certainly.
The United Nations Program for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, also known as UN Women, reported in November of 2025 that approximately 16 to 58% of women worldwide are impacted by technology-facilitated violence, an issue only being amplified by the onset of artificial intelligence-powered online abuse. AI and large language models that have been trained on content containing gender stereotypes are now being integrated into many everyday platforms, such as X's Grok AI or Meta AI. These platforms are now being used to further propagate the spread of gender-based abuse in an even more violent and widespread manner than before. Since the boom of artificial intelligence via ChatGPT in 2023, AI has become a household name and topic across the globe. In this new reality, both new challenges and new opportunities are at the forefront of conversation for domestic violence survivors and advocates alike. Joining us today in this conversation is Adam Dodge. As the founder of ntab.org, Ending Technology-Enabled Abuse, and the Tech Savvy Parent, Adam's work is characterized by his dedication to addressing the existing and future threats posed by technology to victims of crime and gender-based violence. He has written extensively on technology-enabled abuse, non-consensual pornography, and created the first resource guide for victims of non-consensual deepfake pornography. Adam spends a great deal of his time delivering innovative technology-enabled abuse presentations to organizations around the world. He is also a special advisor to the Coalition Against Stalkerware and sits on the World Economic Forum's Pathways to Digital Justice Advisory Committee. Adam has been interviewed on the subject of technology-enabled abuse for Vogue, The Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Self Magazine, Los Angeles Times, Gizmodo, GQ, and the MIT Technology Review. A licensed attorney in California, he earned his JD by way of McGeorge and Hastings College of Law. Thank you, Adam, for joining us today. To give you some context, I studied data science as my minor during my university studies, and as a result, I've clearly witnessed how each day brings the onset of some brand new article, publication, or feature discussing a new, quote, revolutionary technology, unquote. Now, while news of this brings a lot of hope for a more advanced future, it also comes with new challenges unique to this sphere of updated digital technology and artificial intelligence. We would love to hear from you on this topic. What are the challenges that this new era of AI and large language models brings, particularly for victims and survivors of domestic violence?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think about this a lot because anytime a new technology is introduced, it is inevitably misused or weaponized to cause harm, particularly towards victims of gender-based violence. So being able to talk about how this is happening so that we can better understand it is really important. One way that artificial intelligence or AI is showing up as a safety challenge for victims of domestic violence, for example, is through image-based abuse. So something that AI is really good at is manipulating photos and videos, or even creating photos and videos from scratch of a victim that presents them quite often in an intimate scenario, whether that's in a state of undressed or engaging in sexual activity that they never engaged in. But the idea is to create this material to either threaten to post it online as a way to exert power and control over somebody by essentially extorting them under sort of threat of posting or making public these images and videos, or actually posting them and sharing them and creating a false representation of a victim that once on the internet can never be taken down. And because artificial intelligence is so good at this, it is difficult from from the viewer's standpoint to discern whether the image is real or AI generated. So this is happening now, and it is going to continue to happen at great sort of efficiency. These models that are creating these images or allowing people to create these images are getting better and better. In fact, just a few days ago, there was a news story that came out that um, an AI chatbot from X, formerly known as Twitter's platform called Grok, um, is allowing people to edit photos that other people post without the person who posted its consent. And you can edit it by simply telling the chatbot what you want the photo to look like or how you want it to change. And the reason this was newsworthy was because people were able to edit photos of women and girls, primarily girls, underage girls, into sort of sexually explicit images. And I think that really showcases what we're dealing with. And the thing that aside from raising awareness about this, is helping people understand that there is no difference from the victim's perspective when we're talking about the trauma from these images, whether they are AI generated or authentic images. Either way, the trauma is real, the harm is real. And I think that's important for us to know, because sometimes people will say things like, well, it's AI generated, so what's the big deal? It's not real. Well, in working with people who have experienced this, who have been victims of this type of AI generated image-based abuse, the harm and the trauma is as real as if it were an authentic photo. And so we all need to be taking this really seriously. And the challenge is we can't prevent this from happening because people are manipulating non-explicit photos. So short of telling somebody to just not exist in the AI age, there's no really way to prevent this. And so from a technological standpoint, so what I encourage people to do as much as possible is to talk, especially to our youth, about this technology, because they're the ones encountering it online, and helping them understand that this is a matter of consent and this is a matter of bodily autonomy. And if you encounter a tool or an AI tool that allows you to manipulate the photo or video of somebody without their consent, they should pause before doing something like that and think whether just because they can do it doesn't mean they should do it. And that bodily autonomy doesn't stop with our physical bodies, but in the age of AI, it also includes our images, because those are the ways in which people are harming victims today, is through their photos and sharing photos without consent. And so I think the more we talk to youth about this, the more we can create a culture that identifies this as something as harmful, that's something that violates consent and bodily autonomy, and hopefully give people the opportunity, especially young folks, the opportunity to make a different choice when they encounter a technology that allows them to manipulate images.
Thank you, Adam, for such a well thought out and eloquent response. I completely agree that it's extremely important for all of us, especially members of my generation and younger, who are being primarily exposed to these technologies, to always engage with our humanity before taking any form of action with the technology that we do not necessarily know enough about or have adequate knowledge of. Now, as I mentioned previously, and as you agreed with, there are naturally so many threats that can come out of advances in any aspect of any field of discovery and or innovation. But of course, there can also be benefits. Artificial intelligence has already been utilized to the benefit of the everyday lives of many people. So what I would like to ask you is what would you say are some of the more positive opportunities that can come out of this technology in terms of actually supporting survivors and victims of domestic violence and enabling them to truly feel the most safe and supported in their journeys and overall lives?
I think that there is a lot of mistrust of AI in our field, and rightfully so. And yet, we really have no choice but to embrace it where we can, because the future is going to be, and really in many ways already is, uh, a place where AI is sort of intimately mixed into our professional and personal lives. And we can't, if we want to meet victims where they are and support them, then we need to do so in a way that encompasses artificial intelligence. But I want to be careful to say that we shouldn't just adopt every new AI app out there that promises to, you know, triple our productivity and do all these things. It really needs to be an informed choice. And that starts with AI literacy. So really understanding whether or not a tool, whether it be, a chatbot that handles uh, sort of website questions on your site or things like that, or for all the way to, hey, we have a new voice AI that can handle your hotline calls. I mean, these are very eye-catching technologies for those that work in the field of gender-based violence or domestic violence in the nonprofit space. Like, we are forever sort of spread very thin and trying to meet the need of every survivor in our communities. And AI sort of has swung in and said, hey, well, we can help you do that. And I think we should proceed with caution, but we should proceed when we encounter an AI powered tool that might help us with our mission. But we need to be very mindful of sort of the unintended consequences of using tools like that and really make sure that these tools are well tested. So, to use an example of something that hasn't quite happened yet, but like an AI operator for a domestic violence hotline that is always available, that never gets tired in the middle of the night, is a real pain point for nonprofits to try to staff the hotline in the middle of the night. And an AI voice could be really beneficial in that way. But if it were me and I was presented with that opportunity, I would really want to thoroughly test it out internally, to really understand what it can and cannot do. I would want to know that this product has been tested thoroughly by the platform that is selling it to me. And even then, after being satisfied by what they're doing, being satisfied by testing internally, I still might wait a bit before using it, because I would want to proceed with caution. If I felt like, oh, I'll do a month's worth of testing internally, and we'll have staff talk to the AI and make sure and throw different scenarios at it, I might do 2 months, right? And really double down, because this technology is unpredictable and we have to be really careful with the safety of our folks, of our survivors and victims that rely on us. So I think, yeah, just being extra cautious, but being open to these technologies is one way I think about it. The other thing that I bring up a lot in sort of violence prevention, violence response spaces is that we live in an age now where if you want to develop a tool internally for your agency, or you have an idea for a website or an app or a game that would normally require you to be a software engineer or to hire a software engineer. Well, now we're at a place where AI assisted coding will allows us, empowers us to create tools and innovate and explore different ways that we can create the tools that we need, the tools that we know that victims and survivors need. It's often referred to as vibe coding, but essentially it's using AI as your own personal software engineer, and you just tell it what you want and it creates it. And then you tell it what you want it to change, and it does that too. Is it perfect? No. But is it also amazing? Yes. And I use it quite often to do this. And sometimes I get frustrated, but I'm able to create things that I just never thought possible. And that is sort of the future of engineering in our space. And I get really excited by the idea of people who work on the front lines of domestic violence and sexual violence and gender-based violence being also able to create the tools that they know are needed in our field, and are able to create them sort of rapidly and test them and deploy them really quickly. So I just want people to be open to that because I am just really buoyed by the idea that our field will embrace this new sort of superpower in 2026. And I just can't wait to see what people create and build.
Thank you so much, Adam, for your optimism. It is very enriching to hear and also important for us so that Maitri can see how we may be able to utilize these technologies to the advantage of our organization and those we serve. For our final question, as this podcast episode is for our Policy Matters podcast series, we would love to know what you believe are good policies for containing artificial intelligence to be able to create beneficial outcomes rather than allowing it to further avenues to propagate harm and abuse.
Well, I think there's a lot of policy initiatives happening right now, particularly in California, around AI safety. One area that I'm interested in is the regulation of AI domestic violence advocates that are already in existence that offer to basically help survivors of domestic violence and gender-based violence without having to go to an agency, without having to call a hotline. It's all in existence on an app. And I think there's promise there. But there's also a lot that makes me uncomfortable about that. So I would like to see on the policy side of things some regulation, sort of like what we've seen with AI therapy apps, that really addresses what these things can and cannot do, the type of testing that is required. Because I think you and I and others that work in our field are very protective of our victim and survivors communities. And I am uncomfortable with companies seeing a financial opportunity by developing domestic violence advocate chatbots and deploying them all over the country. And I would like there to be some regulation, some policy regulation around that that would require and set a pretty high bar for anybody who wants to create something, a product like that. So that's sort of on the policy side of things, what I think about a lot. And then on the community level, I think a lot about education. I think a lot about getting into our schools, something that our field does very well from like a healthy relationship education standpoint. But I think we need to expand those conversations to include artificial intelligence, either from the perspective of having a relationship with an AI chatbot, which is happening, right? Which is we know is happening across the country from recent surveys and studies, and helping them understand that there aren't a different set of rules around healthy relationships with these chatbots that look, sound, act, and feel like human beings, that we need to really treat them with the same level of intention and caution that we would with another human being. And then the other side, the flip side of that is we're seeing a lot of young people use AI in their relationships to help them craft questions, responses, flirtations, all these different things. And so we're starting to see this sort of AI mediated relationships happen now. And in that, I think we lose a lot of authenticity, a lot of social skills, a lot of soft skills. And so, how can we be thinking about that in our communities on a community level to make sure that the kids in our communities are not outsourcing their relationship and their interpersonal skills to AI, to a degree that might be considered unsafe or unhealthy, and sort of help them know when and where to use AI in their relationships. So that's how we at NTAB are thinking about it on a community level, most certainly.
That's it for our conversation for today. Please don't forget to educate yourself on using AI technology responsibly. Check out the resources we shared in the description of this podcast. Maitri is here to encourage our community to be able to foster healthy relationships. Thank you, and see you next time.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Maitri podcast Between Friends. Please don't forget you can find all our episodes on Maitri Bay Area's YouTube channel, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Please like, share, and follow Maitri's podcast and social media pages and spread the word. And please visit our website, maitri.org. Thanks again for listening. Bye for now. We will catch you in the next episode. Maitri is a free, confidential, non-profit organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area that helps families and individuals facing domestic violence. Don't suffer in silence. Call Maitri Helpline 1-888-8-MAITRI.
This show is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as legal advice. Always consult an attorney for legal advice. Views expressed by guests of the radio show are individual opinions and not endorsed by Maitri.